Hello, everybody. Kamish here. I was going to do a new type of video for recap and then also projections or analysis of moving forward. But this week it's a little bit different. We have some problems or some discussion, let's say, regarding something that happened this week. And I just wanted to take some time out and use this video to explain the situation. So for those of you that are not familiar with the situation, it was Sunday, approximately 3:05. Proctor calls me and says, "Hey, I messed up. I meant to drop Heath Miller or the defense, and I dropped Ronnie Hillman." My initial reaction was I would fix it for him through the league manager ad drop. And the reason this was my initial reaction, about 2 years ago, most of you were in the league. There's a couple that were not in the league 2 years ago, but Matt had a similar situation where he dropped a player he did not mean to drop. He called me within like a minute or two of it happening, say, "Hey, I screwed up, dropped the wrong guy." And I did the same thing where I added the player back and then dropped the player that he added. So that the initial instinct was just to fix the mistake. It was an honest mistake, and that's what I did. In the previous time, 2 years ago, I also explained it on the message boards what I did, so it didn't look like there was some weird shit going on. And I did the same this time. It was a little bit more complicated because he wanted to drop Miller, which allowed me to drop Miller as a league manager. However, Miller was in the middle of a game, and I realized that you can't drop players that are in the middle of a game, so I reverted that change. The end result was him dropping the Bengals defense, and he got Hillman back. Now, I want to say it was Anquan Boldin 2 years ago, but nonetheless, whoever it was, nobody really had an issue with it. There was actually no replies as far as I can remember regarding it. So it was just kind of under my understanding that everyone was cool with it. Well, this time, a little bit different story, maybe because Hillman has a little bit more value than who was previously dropped, and it can affect the waivers. There were some issues with people saying a drop's a drop, which I agree. I agree that all the arguments or all the debates or all the standpoints or the viewpoints of which were submitted within the message board thus far are all legitimate. Like it makes sense. And I think it goes to Kim saying a drop's a drop. You have like 4 different confirmations that you have to put in to actually drop the player or whatever it may be. And then even J. Lou said that, what did he say? Oh, well, okay, so let's say it happens within 5 minutes and you call. That's cool. What happens if it's in 10 minutes? What happens if I don't answer the phone? What happens if it's in 15 minutes or 30 minutes? There's gray area in which that at some point the drop, how much later can you call and say, "Oops, I screwed up"? So I get that argument as well too. So at this point, like I felt it was an honest mistake, and a mistake that could essentially been avoided, and there was lots of confirmation to do it. But being that I set somewhat of a precedence by doing it in the past, and I would have done this for any player, not specifically Proctor or Matt or whoever. If anyone would have done this and called me, then I would have done the same. So the problem is I talked to J. Lou a little bit earlier, and he said, I wasn't even aware that I could do this. If it happened to me, I'd have been like, "Oh, fuck, I dropped the wrong guy," and just kind of dealt with it. So, and he wasn't in the league 2 years ago. So I suppose there would have been some kind of unfair advantage. But the point is, okay, so let's say it happened to you and you don't like this. And I did this for you, you probably would be happy. But there is a lot of gray that could happen from doing this, gray areas, which means that going back to what J. Lou said, 15, 20 minutes down the road, what happens if it's the next day? Is that too far? Who determines what's far, too long, whatever? Ultimately, what's going to happen is no matter what the decision is, if it's based on my discretion as the commissioner, somebody could potentially have a problem with it. So in order to not run into this problem again, so to say, and especially if it was a player of potentially even greater value where this happened, we are not going, if you drop a guy, he's dropped. You're not going to be able to call me and switch it up, because this way is probably the safest way for people to not have issues in the future. So Because what happens if we say, okay, yeah, you could do that as long as it's within 5 minutes or 7 minutes? What happens if somebody calls me it's in 8 minutes? And it's just too much gray area. And also I thought about it, you could join random leagues for money on ESPN or whatever website you want. I would imagine if you did that, you dropped a player and then you try to like email them or whatever, it couldn't, you wouldn't get that guy back. And yes, you can make the argument it's a league of friends that know each other, so this kind of stuff should be okay. And it is okay until somebody has a problem with it. What I did 2 years ago and what I did today, is it the nice thing to do? Yes. Is it the 100% right thing to do? That's where you can argue yes or no. You could argue, no, it's not the right thing to do. He had 3 or 4 or 5 different ways of confirming that he wanted to drop him. Or you could say, yes, it is the right thing to do because mistakes happen. We're human. And if he calls you right away, then it's fine. So to take that argument out in the future, we're just not going to allow it. You're not going to be able to call me and be like, hey, I fucked up. If you fucked up, you fucked up. So that's kind of where I'm at with this, and that's why I am trying to and I set a new rule. It's not really a rule. There is no new rule. The rule has always been if you drop a player, he's done. But again, in past precedents, 2 years ago, somebody called me right away and said, oh, I fucked up. Can you fix it? Sure. It's the nice thing to do. Is it the right thing to do? That's where you can argue. So going forward, there's not really any change in rules or a new rule. It's you drop a guy, he's dropped. And that's kind of how it's always been in fantasy football, with, again, the exception of making an oops and then calling me. It's happened twice now. First time, nobody seemed to care. Second time, people care. And people have the right to care and can argue that it should not have been done. But unfortunately, at this time, being that I did it before, being I reverted it, and being that the waivers have already went through, it would totally fuck up now going back. I'm not going to redo the waivers and bring them back and let whoever the first person wanted to have chance and so on. But lesson learned, I guess, going forward, if you drop a guy, make sure you really want to drop him, because I'm not going to put him back in your lineup. So I just wanted to send this video so people can understand the thought process that I use in order to make the change, being that I set the precedence before, and then also that I agree with, if you have an issue with it, you have a right to have an issue with it, because I can see both sides. And there's other people that are saying, hey, mistakes happen. You called in a timely manner, whatever. So what's done is done. Going forward, the league has pretty much set the precedence that we should not do this because there are problems, or there will be potential problems. And if somebody has a similar situation going forward, but it's not, people could still be upset about it. So there you go. That's the explanation. Drop at your own risk and no redos. So just want to send this video out to clarify things, and one, explain that I wasn't trying to do a favor for anyone in terms of showing favoritism. I would have done it for everybody, and I did it based on a precedence that I did 2 years ago where nobody had a problem with. So that's kind of where we're at. So yeah, Commish out.